If you've paged through the Times-Argus or Rutland Herald this year, you may have noticed your Vermont history IQ going up. We're learning how these local papers are celebrating Vermont's past today on Across the Fence. Hello, Vermont. History doesn't usually make the headlines, but given the approaching 250th anniversary of American independence, this year, everything old is new again. What better time to buy into the buzz and inject a Vermont angle? So thought the Rutland Herald and Times-Argus when the papers launched Glimpses of Vermont's Past back in January. Even better, there are actually about 15 years of semi-quincentennials, that's 250 years, ahead of us as we work our way toward the 250th celebration of Vermont statehood in 2041. That is a lot of potential column inches dedicated to history. But if anyone can handle it, it's my esteemed guest. Kevin Graffagnino has written extensively on Vermont history in books like Ira Allen, a biography, Vermontiana, an annotated checklist, and Green Mountain Quartet, essays on antiquarian Vermontiana. He also served as executive director of the Vermont Historical Society and was the curator of Vermont history for UVM's Special Collections Library. That's a lot of accolades. Kevin Graffagnino, welcome.
Thank you, Amy. Nice to be back.
It is wonderful to have you here. So have you signed up for a 15-year gig on this paper?
You know, I'm 71. I don't make any 15-year plans. The clock is ticking.
I think you could pull that off, but it's not going on for the next 15 years, although
No.
I'm sure you could pull out that many. What's going on with this column? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, Steve Pappas, the publisher-editor at Times-Argus, called me in November last year and said, I'd like to have you do a column for us weekly on Vermont history. And I said, yeah, I could do that. I hadn't done newspaper writing for quite a while, but I thought it's a good time to do it, introduce real Vermonters to Vermont aspects of Vermont's history. And then I remember that I don't like writing to deadline. So I wrote all the columns in December and turned them in to Steve. And,
so basically you wrote a book. Another book,
yeah.
But it was just 52 versions of the book, etc.
Took me 20 days.
20, okay, 20 days, that's
and,
great.
They've been running them on a weekly basis. The reaction seems to be pretty favorable. So,
Oh, that's fantastic. So how did you decide what to cover?
Well, Steve and I decided that if we do it as a 2-year project, we would do the 19th and 20th century for this year. And next year, we do the 18th century because it's the 250th of Vermont's creation. So I looked around at the things I'd written about, the things I thought were interesting between 1800 and 2000. And I like to write about people rather than big events or big groups. Interesting Vermonters, chronological spread, geographic spread, gender, that sort of thing, so that I could get some things out there in front of people to make them want to read more about Vermont history.
And so each of these, they're not very long. They're about what,
800 words
or something? Okay, there you go. So just long enough to tease the curiosity.
Exactly.
And then I think in each one you also give some, here's if you want to go deeper, here's a little bit more reading and things for you. Do you just point them to your work?
Well, yeah, a lot of the things I point them to are things I've written. It's set the hook. And reel them in on that topic and get them to read more, get them to go to the great libraries of Vermont history, UVM, Vermont Historical Society, and get them thinking about it more than they might otherwise.
Okay, well, setting the hook is going to become relevant in a minute here because I have a few here that I hoped you would tell us more about, starting with Walter Hard. So tell me about Walter Hard.
Well, Walter Hard's one of my favorite Vermont writers. He was born and raised in Manchester, Vermont. He took over the family drugstore, but always wanted to be a journalist and a writer. And in the 1920s, in his 40s, he started writing poems about aspects of Vermont life in the 19th century, things he remembered as a boy. They proved very popular. He usually ended them with some sort of a quip or a light joke, but there's real substance to them. He became very popular. He became an influential national voice on Vermont's image. What was Vermont becoming? How was the tourist industry responding to what was Vermont like? And I thought, I want to write about him again. I'd written about him years ago. His papers are at UVM, and I really think he's somebody that, he wrote poetry for the man who doesn't like poetry. And it's easy to get into, it's fun, and I want people to pay more attention to Walter Hard.
Well, I like how you prefaced him also, because you talked a little bit about Frost being
Yes.
the poet that, you know, many people associate with Vermont, and so then you said people have their own sort of sub-Frost list, and
Yeah.
he was the top
He's
of
the
your
top for my
sub-Frost
list. Frost is our great international poet. We're very proud that he lived and worked here, and that he wrote about Vermont occasionally. He's the A++ Vermont poet.
But Walter Hard sounds like
he's the A- poet.
Well, but he also had his finger on the pulse and really wanted to talk about,
Yeah.
like I said, loved how you said that he was thinking about what Vermont had been and what it was becoming, like an
exactly.
idea of Vermont in transition. Okay, let's look at another one. This next one, how about, so this is John Spargo.
Spargo's a fascinating guy. He's born and raised in Cornwall, England. He becomes a stonemason and a Marxist, and becomes a voice nationally for socialism. Comes to America in 1901 on a lecture tour that evaporates as soon as he gets here. And he scrapes out a living in New York. He writes books about child labor, income inequality, becomes an American socialist leader, and then all of a sudden moves to Bennington and breaks with socialism because he supports the Allied effort in World War I, and the American Socialist Party does not. And he just hurls himself into Vermont history instead. He's tremendously energetic. He's a good, fast writer. He founds the Bennington Museum. He's president of the Vermont Historical Society. He writes books about Vermont, and he moves from socialism in the early 20th century. He's a Goldwater Republican by the time he dies in the mid-60s. His papers are at UVM. There's a great book waiting to be written from those papers about John Spargo's impact on Vermont history from the 20s to the 60s.
Okay, that's a fascinating one. Now, I promised something that had to do with fishing, so this is one more, although it's a little more like two. We have Chubb and Orvis of fly fishing fame.
Vermonters know the Orvis Company very well. Americans know the Orvis Company. Outdoorsmen do, certainly. Their great counterpart on the east side is the Thomas Chubb Company. Chubb is a veteran of the Confederate Navy who moves to Vermont to create a fly fishing factory. And he turns out reels and lures and flies and anything a fly fisherman might want. It's a big factory. Does this for decades and puts out printed color catalogs. It's a big business for little Post Mills, Vermont. Orvis on the west side lasts a lot longer, is still going very much today, but the two of them become national suppliers for fly fishermen. They're very, very well known in their day, as Orvis still is. And if you like to collect stuff, then go to your great-grandfather's attic and find some Chubb and Orvis stuff from the 19th century, and you'll have something really special.
Well, they also help participate in that construction of an outdoorsman type of an identity for Vermont as well, right?
Yeah.
Standing in our pristine rivers, casting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful romantic image of what
Exactly.
Vermont and our
And
countryside
they tie
looks
into
like.
that in the same way that Walter Hard helps create it with his poetry. You've got Vermont Life magazine after World War II, and the machine that is promoting Vermont as a place to vacation, get a second home, is enormously powerful and influential, and it's still working today.
Yeah. I don't have a graphic for it, but another column that you did write is called Why Vermont History Matters.
Yes. Go around the state doing this
Yeah.
as an hour-long lecture in, say, a minute and a half. It matters for three reasons. It matters individually, because if you don't have memories of your own childhood or of the stories your grandma told at Thanksgiving or the town you grew up in, you're at sea without an anchor in terms of what do I believe in, what do I stand for, and what does it mean to be a Vermonter. That's one. Two, history is a glue for the natives and the newcomers. The newcomers move here because of Vermont authenticity, small villages, pristine landscape. The natives are here, proud of their heritage, and the local historical society becomes the bridge that brings those two groups together, makes them realize they have something in common. 3, you cannot resolve the problems that Vermont is struggling with without a sense of the history of those issues, whether it's education or transportation or the environment. There's a background.
Yeah.
Let the historians at the table tell you how we got here, and you're going to do a heck of a lot better job on where do we go from here.
Kind of leans into that anecdote about those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it.
Doomed to repeat it.
It's the things we
In
learned.
T-shirt terms, if you take history out of Vermont, we might as well live in
New Jersey. I read that. Okay, well, it sounds like you are committed to Glimpses through 2027.
Yes.
What do you see in the next 52? I know you said 18th century. You want to give us just a couple of highlights? And
Well,
almost
there's
done.
so many in Vermont's early decades. You've got the Allen brothers. That's a good 4 or 5 columns. You've got the Westminster Massacre. You've got the American Revolution in the Champlain Valley. You've got Vermont's transition from a battleground of Yankee versus Yorker to what will become the 14th state in America, and lots of individuals, Thomas Chittenden, Jacob Bailey, Isaac Tickner, Matthew Lyon. Again, I like to write about people.
Basically, he's got all 52 of these columns already written in
I
his
do
head.
actually, yes.
All right, well, Glimpses of Vermont's Past appears every week in the Times-Argus and Rutland Herald. Be sure to pick up a copy, or you can also read the column online in the paper's websites. The addresses are right there on your screen. Kevin Graffagnino, thank you so much for joining
Thanks,
me today.
Amy.
I feel a little bit more versed in Vermont history. You've also given me some great books to
given
help
you some
bring
reading.
me up to speed. He gave me a homework assignment.
Yes.
I'm going to dutifully do my homework and read your papers. All right. And as always, thank you, Vermont, for learning and exploring with me today. And thanks to the team that makes Across the Fence possible. I'm Amy Finley. This is Across the Fence. Come back and let's learn and explore again tomorrow.